All right, guys, what's going on? It's your boy, Dr. Miles, aka Dr. Drew, aka the Jungle Vet, whatever you know me as. And for today's video, we're going to be talking all about the NAVLE. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about what the NAVLE actually is, what my experience with the NAVLE is now as a graduated veterinarian, and lastly, what to do if you failed the NAVLE.
You look lonely. I can fix that.
Okay, so for starters, what is the NAVLE? So the NAVLE stands for the North American Veterinary Licensing Exam. This is an exam that every single fourth year veterinary student has to take in order to legally practice in the United States of America. Every single fourth year student from every single vet school and curriculum has to take this exam in order to practice on live animals. It is a 7.5 hour, 360 question beast of an exam that you basically spend all 4 years of vet school prepping to take this one thing. So you could probably imagine how dedicating all that time, energy, effort, studying day in and day out for months to even years at a time, doing all that to fail that exam would be pretty devastating, right? Well, lucky for you, you don't have to imagine because it happened to me. And that's why I'm making this video today, to give you guys some tips, tricks, and just general tools that I think are going to make you super successful on that next go around. All right, so let's first get into what my original study plan was to attack the NAVLE when I first took it, my fourth year of vet school. This was 2022, and I started studying as soon as my clinical year started. So this would have been around the end of April / beginning of May, and my test was set for November. So doing the math, that's about 7 to 7.5 months that I gave myself to study for this exam. And it's actually not too far off from what's recommended or encouraged for most vet students, because they're either going to follow a 3-month study plan or they're going to follow the 6-month study plan. So for me, I gave myself 1 additional month than what is recommended. And when you compare both of these study plans, I don't think either one is wrong. I just think you have to assess what type of student you are and how you learn / study the best. For me, I knew that I didn't want to feel like pressed for time or any additional pressure to get through so much information, that the 6-month / 7-month one made the most sense for me. But I've known people who've passed this exam on the first time with no problem using the 3-month protocol. So really just having some self-reflection and understanding how you learn best is going to help you decide which study plan or study timeline you should follow. Okay, so then most vet schools are going to either recommend or maybe even purchase for you one of the 2 main study programs used for this exam. The first one being Vet Prep, the other one being Zuku. My school ended up purchasing Vet Prep for us, and at that point in time, no one really had an actual preference between one of the 2. Obviously, you kind of ask around, you ask different upperclassmen, people who took it before, you'll get many different opinions, but at that point in time, your first time taking it, you really don't have any preference, so Vet Prep was fine with me. So for me, I did use Vet Prep, but that's not the only study tool that I used. I also utilized my school notes from, lectures and class and things like that. I also use the ICVA differential diagnoses list, which is a super long list of different diseases or common diseases that you see in the big 4 species, the big 4 being dog, cat, cow, and horse. This list should still be available online. I'll maybe pin it or post it in the description. That way you guys can have access to it. It's basically just a blank list of, again, hundreds of different common diseases for each of those 4 species that you can fill out however which way you want. A lot of my vet student friends that had graduated already recommended using this to study, as well as other veterinarians. They all recommend to incorporate this as a part of your study arsenal because, again, it covers so many of the common diseases that you will see on this exam. So I utilized Vet Prep, I utilized this ICVA list, I used my own study notes, but I also used this guy right here. This is Zuku's top disease list for every single species you can think of. Obviously mine is super highlighted, and this is something that I still use today in practice now. I absolutely adored this. I called it my holy grail. You can find this on Zuku's website, I believe. I printed it out and got it binded at some sort of print shop, but it comes online and you can keep it online, download it to your iPad, MacBook, whatever the case may be. But this was super key when it came to studying for me, both the first time and the second time. Now, keep in mind, I'm doing all this studying during my clinical year. During your fourth year, you have no more classes, it's just straight clinics, and you have the option to schedule vacation blocks throughout that year. That way you're not constantly at the school and can actually dedicate isolated time to studying for your NAVLE. But for me, I didn't want to be at the school any longer than I needed to be, so I didn't take any vacation blocks and just powered through all 12 clinical blocks back to back to back in a consecutive manner. Is this something I recommend? Yeah, I think it's very feasible. I didn't feel like burnt out or stressed at any point during that time, but you have to be very disciplined. Like I said, because I didn't have any vacation blocks and I'm studying for essentially 7 months straight, it's very easy to get bored and kind of like over the idea of studying pretty quickly, but you got to lock in mentally and you can get it done. And I don't regret doing it, nor do I think if I would have taken vacation blocks, would that have maybe gave me a different result the first time? I don't think that at all. I don't regret, again, like making that decision because I was done my entirety of vet school by December. So as I'm chugging along, utilizing my study plan, getting closer to my test date, again, using those same resources I mentioned in the beginning, being vet prep and all of its resources, using my own study notes, my study group, this holy grail here of the Zuku top 20 diseases, as well as that ICVA differential diagnoses list. I'm starting to feel good, and I take one more, this is my third ICVA practice exam. But I take it under very different circumstances than I did the first two. And for this one, I scored a 420, which was my high end, because remember, this exam doesn't grade it with a definitive number, it gives you a range. So my high end was a 420. I think my low end was still not that bad. It was in the threes. I think it was like a 390, a 395, something like that, but not too bad with the passing score. Again, remember it being a 425. So the score of 420 gave me some really good confidence. And this is just a practice exam, and I still have, another week to kind of lock in on key topics. So I'm feeling good at this point. So fast forward to the morning of the exam. I'm not going to give you guys all the details about what led up to it and how I felt in between each section. Just know that I took it and I got through it. And the main points of my recap for that would be I used all the time. I was there for the entire duration of the exam. Like I said, it's about 8 hours, and I was there till the end of every single section. Good, bad, ugly, I don't know. Well, I didn't know at the time. I still don't think it's a bad thing if you're there the entire time, but that was my reality. I was there. After I finished, I felt decent. I didn't feel like I failed. I didn't feel like I passed. I just knew it was a 50-50. And I was hoping I was going to end on the better half of that 50-50. So I took it, met with my friends, because I took it on the same day as them. 3 of my many friends in vet school. I took it with 3 of them, and we met for dinner, and we talked about it. And I didn't think about the exam again after that day for the most part. So it was rumored that we were going to get our results maybe like the 3rd week of January. So I would have been in the 1st week of my externship. And that's exactly when we got them. So I just pulled up to work that day. It was January 18th, man. January 18th, 2023, I'm just getting to my externship, and one of my friends, Ashley, she sends the little eye emoji in the group chat, and that let everybody know that they were out. And I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous. Like I said, I'm literally at my externship right now, and I asked the doctor, hey, can I go back to my hotel so I can open this like by myself in the comfort of my own, space? She says, yeah. I go home and I am like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. Because at this point, Ashley showed that she passed and no one else said anything yet, but it's early. So I'm like, okay, it looks like I'm the next one. I click open that file, downloads, and nice and bold letters, F-A-I-L. Fail. This absolutely wrecked me. Like, who knew 4 letters had the power to change someone's entire world in that moment? I mean, I was absolutely devastated. I felt like a complete and total failure. I'm going to spare y'all the sob story, but yeah, definitely know that it was difficult. I mean, those beginning stages after finding out the result were definitely tough, especially because my group chat, it was me and 3 of my friends that took it as well. We had named the group chat greater than 425, obviously speaking it into existence that we were going to score greater than 425. They all passed. I was the only one in that group chat that did not pass. So you can imagine how much worse that made this whole feeling. But either way, even despite feeling the way I felt, I knew I had to shake it off for multiple reasons. One, because again, I was in the middle of my externships. That was externship 1 out of 3. So I was just getting started. I needed to shake it off, keep it pushing, but also because I knew that I needed to take this exam again in April. So basically, I gave myself 2 weeks. 2 weeks to just kind of sit with it, take some time to accept it, speak to who I needed to speak to, who I felt comfortable talking to, because I didn't share it with everybody. There was a lot going through my head, but I gave myself 2 weeks, and that 2 weeks only because I only had now 3 months until April to study for this thing. And I was able to lock in and flip myself around, do a 180 mentally, and start studying because this is something that I wanted and it was gonna get done. Like, Whether or not anybody else had anything to say about it, I knew that I wanted to pass this exam and needed to pass this exam, not only to be a practicing vet, but for myself, to prove to myself that I could do it. So once that thought was in my head and locked in, I knew I needed to shake myself off, get back up and get it pushing. So here's the brunt of this video, what I think is most important, this being what I did differently the second time around. I'm gonna go over some tips, my study plan, my thought process, just a whole bunch of things that I felt were extremely beneficial to help me be successful the second time around. All right, so I have my iPad here because I remember when I started studying, I wrote down how I studied in this iPad in my notes. That way I could tell you guys exactly what I did when the time came. So I was kind of foreshadowing that I was gonna pass with this stuff, and it ended up happening. So let me find that really quickly and let's get right into it. All right, so like I said, I gave myself 2 weeks. So this would put me towards the end of January, going to the beginning of February. I didn't start studying at this time, but that's when I let myself stop grieving. I gave myself 2 weeks to really feel it and grieve it and, you know, just get over it. And then I had myself in a positive mindset to start to study that month of February. So now this is giving me about 2.5 to 3 months to lock in and do what I have to do, close to the time frame that I told you guys in the beginning, where students either choose the 3-month study plan or the 6-month study plan. So now I'm closer to that 3-month study plan, but I think it was closer, like I said, like 2.5. So what did I do differently as far as resources and tools utilized the second time? So like I mentioned, I used Vet Prep. The school bought us Vet Prep the first time. The second time around, for the ones who didn't pass, we went Zuku. I was very, very happy that we chose Zuku this time for a couple reasons. I spoke to some people who also didn't pass the first time, people who are now veterinarians or who were now veterinarians at that point in time while I was still a vet student. And both of them had sworn by Zuku. They said, man, Zuku was what changed it for me. Like, I should be on payroll because I speak so much about Zuku. I think it's the better program. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, if the school's buying Zuku now, I'm feeling good and even more, a little bit more confident now because I have people giving me their testimonies that Zuku is this, you know, miracle drug type of thing. So started off with Zuku. I used the same ICVA differential diagnoses list with those hundreds of different diseases. I still use my study notes. I used all of Zuku's resources. That's why it was better than Vet Prep. I feel like Zuku does indeed have more resources available for you as the student to utilize. Vet Prep has a good amount, but I think Zuku, they go into the nitty gritty with more detailed resources than what Vet Prep offered. So you have like their lecture notes, you have their flash notes, you have a bunch of practice questions, you can categorize it like very specifically. You obviously have, you know, the general things, you have their lectures, the whole 9 yards, videos, documents. It's a very, very well-rounded and good software or program. So use Zuku, use the ICVA list. I use my study notes. What I did differently this time that I think was really beneficial was this here, my green book. So what I did, this green book is filled with different diseases per animal. Different diseases per animal. This is like a dog section, whatever. I had it for dog, cat, cow, and horse. And essentially, what I did in that green book is I would go, matter of fact, okay, pause. I'm gonna go through it list by list. Pause. So before I even start giving you the details, one of the main things, one of the most important things I did this time around was make sure I wrote down an extremely detailed and strict study plan because I was pressed for time. I did not have 7 months like I did the first time. So the one thing that you need to do before you do anything else is write out a very strict study plan for those 2.5 to 3 months and stick to it. How I structured my study plan the first time around was I dedicated one species per week. So I would do dog 1 week, Monday through Friday or Saturday. Then I would do cat, cow, horse, exotics. I would just rotate through them and give one species its own week. And that was fine because I had 7 months at that time. However, this second time around, I only have 2.5 to maybe 3 months. So I cannot afford to dedicate one full week to one species. Why? Because if I start dog on Monday and give it a whole week just for dog, I won't see dog material again until 3 weeks later. And that just, at that point, you know, I'm only going to be seeing it 2, maybe 3 times before it's time to take the test. So that was not feasible this time around. So instead what I did was dedicate one day to one species. I would do dog Monday, cat Tuesday, cow Wednesday, and horse Thursday. So each species was seen more than once a week because what I would do on Friday is the following. So for Friday, I would use that day after doing the main 4 species, I would dedicate a little bit of time to exotics. The majority of my focus for this time around, I stayed with the big 4, dog, cat, cow, horse. I gave a little bit of time to exotics, but I knew if I needed to pass You need to get the big four down pat or else you're not going to pass. So in my head, it made more sense, and I was willing to take the gamble of focusing primarily more on the big four species and not so much the, pig and avian and things like that, because I could still pass the exam if I locked in on those four and not so much of the exotics, but not vice versa. If I knew the small ones and not the big ones, you can't pass because the majority of it is the big four. So what I would do is use Friday a little bit for exotics, but the reason why I was seeing the big four again one more time before that week is over is because on Saturday, I would go through dog and cat together plus the practice questions on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I would do horse and cow again on Sunday. So now I'm seeing each of those four a second time over the weekend. And when I say practice questions, I was doing 100 practice questions a day. So on Monday, I was doing 100 dog practice questions. Tuesday, I was doing 100 cat practice questions. Wednesday for cow, Thursday for horse, and then doing some for exotics on Friday. Now, this is where this green book that I showed you earlier comes into play, and this was super critical for the second time around, because what I would do is I would pick a section, or I would read a section for a particular species. So let's say I was on dog, let's say it's Monday, I'm doing dog. I would be on the cardiology section, right? I would read the cardiology section, read it thoroughly, understand it, make my annotations, my highlights, whatever the case may be, and then transfer that information for that day, for that section, into this green book as a SparkNotes version. And I would use this green book as very basic, obvious things. It consisted of the name of the disease, the signalment, the differential diagnoses associated with it, how to diagnose it, and how to treat it. Those 4 things for every disease that came from one of the sections from here, because when you physically write something, it sticks better. Studies show, science shows that when you write something down, it sticks in your memory a lot better. It's easier to remember. So I didn't want to type it on my computer. I didn't want to type it in my iPad. I got a notebook specifically for that, and I wrote down every disease in a SparkNotes manner. So then in the same Holy Grail book, like I said, it has all the species in here, the big 4, the small ones, the exotics, all those things, avian, the whole 9 yards. What I would do for the big 4 is each of the big 4 has what's known as a top 20 diseases. So just top 20 general diseases, and then they go into the specifics like cardiology, neurology, things like that. But each species has just a general top 20 that you're more than likely bound to see on the NAVLE. What I would do every single day for whatever species I would read out loud the top 20 for that species. So for example, I'll show you an example. So you see the title here, top 20. Top 20 canine diseases, part 1. It has that for every single species, for cow, for cat, for horse, whatever the case may be. I would read this out loud and make sure I knew it like the back of my hand. I should have been able to, I didn't stop reading it until I knew I could quote it and recite it without looking at that book. I did that every single day. So I had so many different aspects of memorization on board the second time. It was almost impossible for me to not memorize the main things. Saturday and Sunday, like I said, I'm grouping the 2 species. I'm doing dog and cat on Saturday and then horse and cow on Sunday. And basically what I would do is take 2 practice exams from Zuku pertaining to those species. So I would either decide to do practice questions or the practice exams. I think more so throughout the 3 months I was doing the practice exams because it served as more of a review, because I redid so many practice questions throughout the week. So I'd pick a practice exam, because for Zuku, what I really liked about it is that you could pick the species you wanted to see on your practice exam. So for Saturday, I would only make the practice exam feature dog and cat questions, and then Sunday I'd do it for horse and cow, and that was it. And again, like I said, Friday being a little bit of exotics, but also kind of like my off day. And then basically before I started the next day, so everything I just told you was for Monday for dogs. Before I started the cat stuff on Tuesday, I would open up my green journal and reread the information that I put in there from last night. So whatever section I went through and added the notes into this green journal, I would review it, read it really quickly, make sure I understood it and it stuck in my head before I started moving on to whatever the new information was for cat on Tuesday. So as you can see, I was extremely critical during the second time around. I was so critical. I did things way differently the second time around because I could not afford to fail again. I did not want to have to take this thing 3 times, 4 times, whatever the case may be, because as crazy as that sounds, that is a reality. Some people do have to go through that for their journey, and there's really no telling because this exam is so hard. No one expects to have to take it more than once, but that is the reality for some people. I knew that I just wanted to get it done a max 2 times, so I did what I needed to do, and I locked in and grinded for 2.5, 3 months straight. I was in my basement every day doing what I needed to do to knock this exam out. So my exam was in April. It was like mid-April. I scheduled one of those ICVA practice exams, the ones that were 4 hours long. I took one of those. I didn't want to take any more than one because I didn't want to like stress myself out or anything like that. I took one in the month of April, maybe a week or a week and a half before my exam, and scored the highest I've ever scored out of any of the ones I've ever taken. I scored a 470. My high end of that range was a 470. I think my low end was like a 410. I absolutely was jumping for joy. I felt so good. Just be able to see the fruits of my hard work for these last 2.5 months was so rewarding and gave me so much confidence going into this exam the next week. Like, I felt ready. I felt ready before, but like I feel even more ready now, but I'm also more nervous the second time because more is on the line. So fast forward to exam day, I did the same stuff that I did the night before, went into the exam, took it with the same exact tactics. The one thing I will say without getting into too much detail, like I didn't do the first time, is in between each section, please take a break. I don't care if you think you can power through 2-3 sections at a time and you want to get out of there. Please make sure after completion of every single section, every section is about an hour, take a break, get up, go for a walk. No one's saying you have to leave the building, but just walk up and down the hallways. Don't take your phone out. Just breathe, walk, meditate, get away from in front of that computer. Please take a break after every single section. I know you're gonna be there a little bit longer, but trust me, I do think it's worth it. So boom, I finished the exam. The main difference between this time and the first time was that I had significantly more time left over per section. Like I said, the first time, I went to the very end. I went to the buzzer beater for every single section, which again, I didn't think was like a bad thing, but I felt rushed. I was like filling in things last minute, whatever the case may be. This time around, I always had a good 8 to 10 minutes before each section finished, which gave me a lot of time to go back, double check my answers, fill in the blanks for things that I had flagged to come back and look at again, the whole 9 yards. And this is a good time to talk about the whole changing your answers thing and why, some people say you shouldn't do it, whatever the case may be. My stance on that is if you have a gut feeling to change your answer, change it, because you should always go with your gut feeling. However, if you're not sure and, whatever other reasonings it could be for wanting to change your answer, at that point, I'd say to leave it. But if there's a strong gut feeling that, no, I think this is the answer, I do encourage you to follow that gut feeling, because a lot of the times it is correct. So that's the only time I ever changed my answer for the second time around, was if my gut told me no, you need to change it to this. And that's what I did. Now, I finished the exam and felt worse. I felt worse after taking it this second time, after finishing it, for 2 main reasons. Oh my gosh. Remember, like it was yesterday. I changed my answer. I changed 2 answers from the correct answer to the wrong answer. And the reason why I knew it was the wrong answer is because I checked after the conclusion of the exam and they were both wrong. And they were the easiest questions that I probably could have gotten, and I bombed both of them. And that caused me to have the worst anxiety from the time I finished that exam until the time we got the results. What I will say is, despite those internal or mental feelings, I never verbalized them. And that is one thing I told myself that I was not going to do whatsoever at all the second time around, is speak any type of negativity into the existence or into the universe, into the world at all. I kept all those thoughts right where they needed to stay in my head, because if they're in your head, they have no power. You give them power once you talk and speak them into life. So I refrained from saying anything pertaining to the word fail or not pass for that entire month, and only spoke positive affirmations to myself and asked my family and friends to do the same. Which then takes us to the grand finale of this story. About a month after finishing the exam, I get my scores back. This is even after I graduated. I graduated vet school already in the beginning of May. We got our results towards the end of May. I'm actually on a cruise at this time. My grandparents got myself and my younger brother a cruise as a gift for me finishing vet school and for him getting into physical therapy school. So I'm on the cruise, I'm in the Bahamas. My friend texts me, the results are out, and my heart drops. My heart drops, and I won't even say too much. This is the video. Literally on second day of my cruise with my brother, his girlfriend, my grandparents, I did not expect scores to come out today. I'm shaking.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Oh my gosh! Let's go!
So as you can see, the weight of the world is lifted off my shoulders. It was the most insane feeling and experience ever. Like, imagine receiving the great news that you just passed your licensing exam to be a doctor in the Bahamas on a cruise surrounded by your loved ones. A bunch of strangers are like hyping me up. It was something out of a movie. In that moment, it was everything I worked so hard for, reaping the fruit of that right in front of my face, and I just couldn't ask for a better outcome. So yeah, I promise you guys that it does get better. It will get better, but you have to believe that in your heart, believe it in your mind, and deep in your soul that you can and will overcome this trial, because that's all it is. It's a trial, and it takes a real man and woman to look failure in its eyes and say, I'm not gonna let this happen again, and I will have a different outcome for this result. With that being said, I wanna give you guys a quick recap, because I know we talked about a lot of information and in great detail, but these are the main things that I need you to take away from this video. With number one being, if you did not pass, to please take the proper amount of time to grieve and come to terms with that result, because if you don't, you're going to be distracted when trying to study for this next go around. So please make sure no one rushes that process for you, but also be self-aware enough to not let it stem too far out, because you still have work to do. Number two is going to be making a very strict and detailed study plan, because this is going to be crucial for two main things. One, helping to keep you accountable during these next 2 to 3 months, but also two, making sure that you actually maximize that time because it's so shortened. Number three is going to be asking your friends that did pass or other recent grads that passed, asking them for their tips and tricks and ways that they studied. That way you can pull a page from their playbook and add it to yours, which is ultimately going to help your overall study plan. So doing that, I strongly encourage. That's something that I did myself, and I do think it really did help. And number four, which is arguably the most important, is going to be focusing on yourself. And what I mean by this is, in these next few months, you're going to be seeing your colleagues, your classmates, your friends, whatever the case may be, posting their passing results, their job offers, their acceptances, whatever the case may be. And it's going to be extremely easy for you to get distracted during the time that you need to be locked in. So whatever you have to do, whether it's deleting social media, keeping your phone on Do Not Disturb, locking yourself in the basement, whatever it looks like, please do this, because I always say comparison is the thief of joy. And during this time frame, it's going to be really easy to rob you of any joy and motivation if you're seeing constantly your friends, classmates, colleagues posting their positive success stories, and you're still in the brunt of yours right now. You have to run your race and your race only, because when you do this, these are the things that are going to be critical in ensuring that you have a different result the next time around. So yeah, I'm wishing you guys the absolute best of luck. Please make sure to leave any comments, DM me with any questions pertaining to this video or anything about NAVLE in general, because I'll be more than happy to answer them. That is exactly why I started all my social media pages to begin with, in order to give back to the upcoming generation of veterinarians. So know that I believe in you. You guys need to believe in yourself, and ultimately know that you got this. All right, peace.